I'd said in a previous video that one of the reasons that I'm voting for Kamala Harris is that I don't want to, in 2028, watch an HBO Originals 3-part docuseries about everything that went wrong. But I guess if that documentary had to exist, this is the story that I would want to tell. It's a personal one about my dad. He got indoctrinated by a right-wing nut job. And it's one thing to indoctrinate my dad. Like, that's not really going to affect anyone except my family. You know, it sucked. But the guy who indoctrinated my dad also indoctrinated somebody else, and that had a huge impact on the world. It resulted in a Trump presidency in a sort of roundabout way. So my dad, all my life, has been a Democrat. He has taught me all of my values. It's been a really weird time. And it started in 2008. My dad was going to a Protestant church, and he met a guy named Orson. Around the same time, my dad's candidate, Hillary Clinton, did not win the primary. I don't know what happened in conversations between Orson and my dad. All I know is that Orson was going to the same church. And shortly thereafter, my dad was like, I'm going to move churches. I'm going to start going to a Southern Baptist church, which was a pretty radical change for my dad. So he switched churches. He was hanging out with Orson all the time. There was mentionitis of Orson, like they were BFFs. And my sisters and I started to notice that my dad's vernacular started to change. And by 2015, my dad was watching OANN, Fox News. It was crazy. Trump was talking about building a wall, and my dad was talking about being anti-immigrant. And he started sending me emails about the dangers of immigrants, specifically brown immigrants, which is really wild because my mom is a brown immigrant. So he didn't send these emails to my sisters, both of whom have white mothers, and I have a brown immigrant one, as mentioned. And I had to email him back and say, basically, you're being xenophobic and racist, and this is not okay. He responded to me that he could not possibly be racist because he's my dad, that I'm his daughter. And that was really wild. So I responded to him and said, I'm your daughter, not your excuse. And I just need to reiterate that he was a die-hard Democrat. Like, I don't understand and have never understood. It's all been incredibly confusing. But I basically blamed Orson. And I did a little research on Orson. It was pretty easy to do because he was an actor. He was on Desperate Housewives. He was on Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. He was a big comedian, I think in like the 60s or something. And it turns out that much like my dad, he was also a diehard Democrat. Like his dad literally co-founded the ACLU. But then, like, I think in the 50s, he got blacklisted in Hollywood because he, like, dated a communist, or that was a crazy time. And it seemed like that experience had an impact on Orson, and he went far right. And then decided, apparently, to bring a bunch of people with him. In 2020, Orson horrifically died. He was hit by 2 cars, actually right around the corner from my dad's house. Shortly after Orson's death, my dad sent me and my sisters his obituary. At the end of that obituary, and this is where that 3-part docuseries comes up, because this is why I would want to start a series this way. At the end of that obituary, there was a quote from Orson's late son-in-law. His son-in-law died in 2012, but there was a quote from him saying that essentially Orson Bean had indoctrinated him as well. Orson's son-in-law, much like my father, much like Orson, was left-leaning, and then the son-in-law met Orson, and Orson did whatever magic he was doing, and this guy turned right wing. And like I said at the beginning of this, it's one thing to indoctrinate my dad. You know, it's not really going to affect the world at all. But the reason that there was a quote in the obituary is because his son-in-law was very, very famous. So to indoctrinate this person who was a super spreader of misinformation, one of the origins of fake news, he was Andrew fucking Breitbart.
In 2009, conservative blogger Andrew Breitbart made his first big splash. It was then he and a pair of conservative activists publicized a series of undercover stings against the federal housing group Acorn, a housing initiative that had publicly supported candidate Obama's campaign. Breitbart posted videos of the stings on his website, biggovernment.com. Acorn staffers were seen offering to set up a brothel for underage prostitutes. The videos went viral, and a conservative star was born. There were questions about the legality of the videos and whether they had been selectively edited to make Acorn look bad. Sound familiar? But it didn't matter. Breitbart got results. Acorn lost its federal funding and collapsed as a national organization.
During Occupy, I was living in LA, and Andrew Breitbart, who's most famously Breitbart.com, would come by and rile up people, and people would follow him around, and there'd always be video cameras around him.
Come by where?
Come by Occupy LA.
Yep.
Behave yourself!
Chill!
You are freaks
Chill!
and animals! You're freaks and animals!
And it turns out he was filming a documentary with his buddy. This guy, you probably never heard of him, Steve Bannon.
Well, Andrew had been Matt Drudge editor. He had been one of the launch editors for Ariane Huffington and the Huffington Post.
His idea was that he was going to launch the Huffington Post of the right, and they were just about to launch it in a big way. They were a few days away from it when Andrew Breitbart died, and that's when Steve Bannon stepped in and became the head of Breitbart News.
Steve Bannon was the chairman of Breitbart News. Bannon calls it a platform for the alt-right and reportedly denies the movement is inherently racist. A profile last year in Bloomberg Businessweek called Bannon, quote, the most dangerous political operative in America.
It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences.
I do want to add, and I feel terrible for having this thought, but after Orson died, I did think, you know, with Orson out of my dad's life, maybe we would get our dad back. And I'm happy to say that a few weeks ago, I was talking to my dad, and completely out of the blue, he goes, Trump's a real asshole, isn't he? And I was like, yes, Dad, he is. Earth is healing.